Sorry if I cut off there a little bit abruptly, but I got a phone call. I just want to continue with this subject of the absolute. Again, this is the so called theory of forms, which is a central part of Plato and a very important part of this dialogue. Um, it is referred to first here, but it becomes important again later on. And here it's really necessary to get an initial grasp of the so-called theory of the forms in order to understand what is Socrates' basis for saying that I mean, this is the explanation for why the philosopher is supposed to welcome death. Again, the simple answer to why is because of this, because true knowledge is only possible after the soul is separated from the body, and that is because, according to Socrates, so the initial idea is that because the mind, and let's say that the soul and mind are very sort of similar ideas here, that the mind can only come to true knowledge once it has separated from the body, which means separated from the senses. So true knowledge is purely intellectual, let's say, or real knowledge, or knowledge, knowledge that really deserves to be called knowledge. Um, Something like that. But why would anybody believe that? I mean, in the last video, I was saying, well, there seem to be plenty of things that I seem to know only because I know them through my senses. So, what is Socrates talking about? Well, I think real knowledge or true knowledge is really where we're going for here. Let's take one of those examples of the absolute. Let's take some absolute beauty. Now, say you go to a museum and you see an individual painting by Picasso, and then you see a sculpture by, I don't know, Bernini, and you see another painting by Monet, etc., etc. You see a bunch of things, and they're all different from each other, right? A Picasso painting looks very different from a Monet, and certainly a painting is a very different thing from a sculpture. But say that you think that they're all wonderful, you think that they're all great, and you say of each one that it is beautiful. Now, what Socrates would say is that, well, you say that the painting by Picasso is beautiful, and that the sculpture by Bernini is beautiful, and that the painting by Monet is beautiful. So, what he would say, or something like this: well, there must be some common element that they all share that makes them beautiful. And his point is that that common element would be the same thing in each of the individual things. That whatever element that draws them together into the same group, beautiful things, would be common to them all, would be the same, in fact, identical in them all. And so typically, like in a dialogue, Socrates would say, well, what is beauty? And what he would be asking you to do is to define that common element that they all share. And that would be the absolute, what is sometimes called the form, or sometimes the essence of beauty. And the idea is that that essence or that absolute or that form is not something that you'd be able to see. Because we could even make it more varied here and say that another beautiful thing would be a um, that would be another thing we might call beautiful, and it's not just things that are visually beautiful. Anything that's beautiful, Socrates would say, is beautiful because in some way or another it participates in the form or essence of beauty itself. So when Socrates asks you what is beauty, what he's looking for is a definition, not of something that is essentially something seeable or something hearable or tasteable or touchable, but something that he would say is a thinkable thing. I think I'm not going to spell it right, but something intelligible, something that can only be grasped with the intellect. Now, I know I'm sort of racing through this without really discussing it at the level at which it might become more plausible. However, that's really what he's getting at here in his argument that true knowledge is only possible uh, after death, because true knowledge is only possible when the mind or soul separates from the body, which kind of holds it back, distracts it, makes it pay attention to individual things rather than absolutes and essences. And it makes sense. I mean, it may not be true, but at least it makes sense. Um, so he says, the bottom of page 8, Socrates says, "But, oh, my friend, if this is true, that is, if true knowledge is of the form, there is great reason to hope that going whither I go, when I have come to the end of my journey, I shall attain that which has been the pursuit of my life, that is, knowledge, right? And therefore I go on my way rejoicing, and not I only, but every other man who believes that his mind has been made ready and that he is in a manner purified. That is, philosophy is an attempt to purify in the sense of emphasize the soul over the body. And to see reality from the point of view of the mind rather than the senses. But this can only be approximated in life, and it's only when the soul separates from the body that it can get real knowledge.